So one of the principal purposes of these records is to record both the oath of the monarch and also the oaths of those in attendance offering their allegiance to the monarch. And this is linked again back to power and the exercise of power and reliability of the people that the monarch was ruling. And obviously it starts in rank order. So we see here in Elizabeth II, it starts with princes and dukes. William and Mary, it's the same with dukes and viscounts, barons, lords and earls. And it's the same kind of information. It's, on one hand, an attendance list. So it's cutting through the information about rights and roles in the ceremonies. It's the people who are there to offer their allegiance to the monarch. And this is really important in setting a record for these people's commitment to support the new monarch in the course of the reign. And obviously in times past, that could be held accountable. People could be held accountable for that oath. And breaking that oath was also breaking their relationships to divine power, because the whole purpose of the ceremony is to impart divine power to the reigning monarch. So the oaths are really important in establishing that relationship and ensuring that the monarch could rely on these people as the reign progressed.
So we have here the first surviving coronation roll. This is the roll for Edward II from 1308. What it does is effectively lays out initially how the coronation should proceed, really. It starts talking here about which members of the aristocracy are allowed to have which role at the coronation, what they're supposed to do. Some of it's quite sort of arcane, but some of it's really important to the function of the day, and will have resonances in King Charles's coronation, or did have resonance in King Charles's coronation. So, for example, a particular member of the aristocracy is to lay a striped cloth in front of the king as he proceeds from the palace towards the abbey to be crowned. Others talk about the bearing of swords. Particular earls are allowed to have particular swords. So again, that was something that King Charles's coronation kind of replicated with the swords being held there. And as you go a bit further on, it tells you about what's supposed to happen on the day. They're all supposed to get up in the morning. They're all supposed to arrive at the palace ready to do their business, and then proceeds to talk about what the actual what the king is supposed to do, the various different masses that are sung during the ceremony. And actually, this is kind of a theory, because they were making this up. This is the first time they've actually documented this, really, because during the 13th century, the crown and the person of the king started to become kind of separate in people's minds. People started to believe that they owed their homage not actually to the person of the king, but to the crown itself. And in the reign of Edward II's father, Edward I, towards the end, there was some difficulties that the king had with his major aristocrats, many of whom survived into his son's reign, and they wanted to lay down in writing just how the king should behave, what the contract between God, the king, and the subjects were, and then the reciprocal arrangement for the subjects to the king. And actually on the back here, it's written on the back, and as we were explaining earlier, it's slightly galled. What you actually have is the actual proceedings. It tells you which individual members of the aristocracy did what on the day. So it tells you that the Earl of Lancaster's brother, for example, held the Curtana sword, which up here it says was supposed to be borne by the Earl of Chester as the successor. And it tells you that certain individuals are supposed to carry a table on which the king's robes are held. And it actually happened that two of the men involved, Hugh Despenser and Roger Mortimer at Wigmore, they ended up basically having a civil war against each other 20 years on, and Roger Mortimer kills Hugh Despenser, or has that part of the end of the reign. Another interesting thing about this is, of course, this is the first roll. Edward III, who is Edward II's son, comes to the throne his father having been deposed. Now, we haven't got Edward III's coronation roll, but I can't imagine how it would have, the concept of creating this and then all of a sudden actually deposing the divinely ordained king, who's still alive at the time. The one thing you'll notice about these are they're all in roll format. So they're sheets of parchment, cut, sewn, and then sewn up by sort of what they call chancery style. So they're sewn at the head and the foot of each membrane and then rolled up. It's an ideal storage device, really. You can store a lot of rolls. You can transport them very easily. We have lots of leather pouches at the National Archives in which rolls were kept, and they're often wrote them on the outside what was in the different pouches. Yeah. The difficulty with the rolls, of course, is they're not easy to find the information, because it's not like a book. You haven't got a contents list or an index. What you often have is literally just something in the margin to tell you where you are. Now, these coronation rolls don't really have that. You have to navigate through them yourself. But the rolls were really an invention of Chancery, which is the Royal Secretariat.
Yeah.
And we think that they were probably stored together, maybe in the Tower of London, over their lifespan, until they came to the old Public Record Office at some point in the 19th century.
For the decision-making for the materiality for the new coronation roll, we looked at the history of the rolls, how they have been prepared and which materials have been used. So historically, it was written on parchment, on animal skins, and it was stitched together with linen threads, which you can see here. And this has been kept up the whole history up till Queen Elizabeth II time, which is still written on parchment. And this time is the first time that we've changed the materiality and decided to work with an Italian paper, Artistico, which is 100% cotton rag. It's an archival quality which ensures that it will last as long as the coronation rolls which have been written on animal skins. In regards to the inks, historically, iron gold ink has been used. Again, on very, very long lasting, because there's a chemical process that's really where the ink kind of bites into the parchment and lasts for a long time, except depending on the mixture of the scribes who mix their own inks, there could be some fading, which you can see especially in this scroll. And there has been a trick by those who are reading the rolls by galling the items, which is kind of a retanning process of the inks, which at first makes the ink really dark and shine so they can read it really well. But unfortunately then, wherever you applied the liquid, the whole area would darken. So that you will find on some of the documents. So in the case of the new roll, we decided to go for a different ink, carbon black ink. And we have some decoration, some red and blue pigments, which for the illustration of the initials, especially at the first one, hasn't kept up all throughout, but has been picked up in Queen Elizabeth's and has been picked up in the new roll again.